Hello everyone and welcome to the December 2016 edition of Budget MTG. I'm Nitsa Hone and this is a monthly series I do where I present you guys with something of a rogue deck build that's built on a budget. In other words, under $100 in paper and around $50 on Magic Online. This particular deck is $85 in paper and around 50 tickets on Magic Online. And these decks are intended to be competitive at a Friday Night Magic environment against more expensive decks generally. This month, I'm tapping into some of the most powerful cards in Standard that are currently underplayed, which luckily for us means that they aren't very expensive, the Eldrazi. This deck is made up entirely of colorless creatures, with Eldrazi making up the bulk of them. The deck in general seeks to disrupt the opponent while playing powerful threats and does quite well against two of the big dogs in the current Standard metagame, Aetherworks Marvel and Blue-White Flash. It has a solid game against Black-Green Delirium, but it is somewhat weak against the fast aggro decks in the format. It also does really well against the control decks in the format that are sort of starting to emerge here and there. So, basically, almost every creature in the deck is a 2-for-1, basically. Or it does something that really disrupts the opponent. It's difficult for the opponent to deal with. Removal's bad against them. And that's true of most of the creatures in the deck. So that's what we'll see as we go through the creatures. We're just going to go through the curve and talk about the cards. We won 3 main board Transgress the Mind, a way of disrupting our opponents. You know, it can hit Aetherworks Marvel, it can hit Avacyn, it can hit all sorts of important cards. Ishkanah is really nice to hit with it. We have 3 Spatial Contortions, our removal, one of our major removal spells in the deck. Kills Smuggler's Copter. You basically have to have a main board way to kill Smuggler's Copter in Standard right now, or you may as well not be playing, and that's one way we have to do it. We've got 2 Eldrazi Mimics. At one point I actually had 4 in the deck, going for a little more aggressive approach. In some ways, but I ended up deciding Scrap Heap Scrounger is just better, and I'd run 6 of them if I could, but I instead have 2 Eldrazi Mimics and 4 Scrap Heap Scroungers. It's just a great card in Standard right now. It's a card that is really good against our opponent's removal because it can just come back, and it's an aggressive 2-mana 3/2. We run a couple Wasteland Stranglers, so we are processing a little bit. We can use it to kill smaller creatures. It does have the downside of not killing Copter, so you should probably side it out against some decks. We've got 4 Matter Reshapers, and this is the first of our cards that just makes our opponent's removal bad. When it dies, we either get to draw a card or put a permanent card with converted mana cost 3 or less onto the battlefield, if that's what the top card of our library is. Filigree Familiar, similarly, a 3-mana 2/2 who gains us some life and draws us a card for us when it dies. It's one of our better cards against aggro decks because of the life gain and the fact it can chump and trade and then reload your hand. We've got 3 Titan's Presences, another form of removal in the deck that's quite good. It kills a lot of things. It does depend on what you have in your hand, so it's a bad top deck if you have no cards in hand. So that's why we only run 3 of them, but it can kill a lot of things even if you just have like a Filigree Familiar in your hand. Then we get into sort of the big guns here, which are our 3 Thought-Knot Seers, which are great at disrupting the opponent. You can just play it and get rid of their best card in their hand, and if they do kill it, they don't get that card back. They just get a random card off the top of their deck, and usually what you hit with Thought-Knot Seer is going to be better than that. Reality Smasher also is basically a 2-for-1. If opponent wants to use removal on it, they have to discard something, and it's just a huge creature that's difficult to deal with. Because we run 4 Matter Reshapers and 4 Filigree Familiars, well, not because, but part of the reason we run them is because we also have all of these creatures with Emerge. The big one is Distended Mindbender, who's very, very good against Black-Green Delirium, good against Blue-White Flash, and good against Aetherworks Marvel. Probably the least good against Delirium because of the fact that they can get cards back from their graveyard and it doesn't exile them, unlike our Thought-Knot Seers and Transgress the Mind. We also run 1 Abundant Maw. It's kind of like a really bad Siege Rhino. We just don't really want 4 mainboard Mindbenders, and I decided running another big threat who has a relevant effect when it comes into play is solid. We also have some interesting lands, since we're a mono black deck that needs access to colorless mana. So we've got 4 Ether Hubs. It can produce black for us once, and other than that, it can produce us colorless mana, which we need. We've got 1 Blighted Fen, a nice little utility land, who also produces colorless mana. 4 Evolving Wilds, because we want to be able to fetch our wastes as well as our swamps. We have 1 Ruins of Oron Reef. It's a very strong land, and I had more in the deck at one point, but the fact that it came into play tapped hurt me too much. But making your, Reality Smasher into a 6/6, your Thought-Knot Seer into a 5/5 is pretty real. 2 Sanctums of Ugin, so when we resolve like a Distended Mindbender or an Abundant Maw, actually don't have to resolve them. When we cast them, we can then search our library for whatever colorless creature it is we need for the situation. Sometimes that can be a Wasteland Strangler to kill something, sometimes it's just a Thought-Knot Seer to disrupt our opponent, sometimes it's a Smasher, and sometimes it's just another Mindbender. So then we've got 4 Unknown Shores. We have it because it can produce black mana for us when we need it to, and the colorless. And we also have 1 Waste. So that's the main board. talk about the sideboard as well. We run a 4th Transgress the Mind. It's good to side in against. It's good to side in against the decks we're already pretty strong against, and especially against Black-Green Delirium. It's better than Distended Mindbender is against them because it exiles things. 3rd Wasteland Strangler. It's nicer against more aggressive decks. Even if they run Smuggler's Copter, having a 3rd Wasteland Strangler to kill their X3s is pretty good. A couple Flaying Tendrils for against those aggro decks, which are a bad matchup for us. A couple Lost Legacies. They're decent against Aetherworks Marvel, primarily. They're also not bad against the blue-red spells decks that are out there. Got a couple of Murders. If our deck's removal isn't going to be good against a particular opponent, like Murders are good against more controlling decks that play bigger creatures because Spatial Contortion and Titan's Presence can't always kill them. We have a 4th Spatial Contortion. You want to bring that in against aggressive decks, especially ones that have Smuggler's Copter, because it gives you another instant speed way to do it. Warping Whale, I don't love it, but I've found myself siding it in against certain decks. It's just got a lot of utility. A lot of the time, you are just going to use it to make a 1/1 Scion, but that can help ramp you. But you can also use it. It's best to side in against people who are running creatures that actually do have toughness 1 or less, which includes the vehicles decks and things like that. Key to the City is in here basically solely because of the existence of Ishkana. That's the one thing. This deck's pretty good against disrupting Black-Green Delirium and then trying to just kill them with our creatures. But if they resolve an Ishkana with Delirium, this deck does have a somewhat difficult time smashing through. We do have ways to kill Ishkana, but Key to the City makes it a lot easier to get through an Ishkana. So against Black-Green Delirium, I really like Key to the City. We've got a couple of Blight Herders. Speaking of Ishkana, this is our very bad version of Ishkana. 5 mana 4/5, who does make 3 Scions if we can get 2 cards out of our opponent's exile. The good news is some decks will be exiling things for us, like with Scrap Heap Scrounger. So it's not always that hard to do, and it's a good card to side in against aggro decks, sort of as our pseudo Ishkana. And we have a 4th Mindbender to side in against the matchups that it's good against, which again are Blue-White Flash, Delirium to some degree, and Aetherworks Marvel. So that is the deck. I'll play 5 matches with it now on Magic Online. So thanks for watching. Also, just a quick reminder that my content is sponsored in part by 5colorcombo.com. It's a great website for basically all of your Magic the Gathering needs. You can find tokens, playmats, you can find articles, podcasts, all of it being free content, and as well as access to a really great app for drafting Magic the Gathering called Draft Magic. So you should check that website out. And if you want to buy something in their store and you happen to be a subscriber to this channel, you can use the discount code NEETZAHONE5 to get a discount of 5%. So